Welcome, everybody, to the Legends of Boxing show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The Legend of Boxing show is brought to you by MyBookie.ag. I'm your host for the Legends show, Mike Goodpaster. My guest today was a heavyweight contender during the 1970s, challenged Muhammad Ali for the heavyweight championship of the world. Please help me welcome to the Grueling Truth, Chuck Wepner. How you doing, Chuck?
I'm doing great. I got a little bit of a cold, but other than that, I'm doing fine.
All right, so let's just start off from the beginning. Tell me a little bit about your life growing up and some of the early influences and how you became a boxer.
Well, I actually was a basketball player earlier on in my life. You know, I started probably in the 13-year bracket. I started playing a lot of basketball, but I was, I was good enough to play locally, but not good enough to play professionally and make any money. So they were paying people in them days to fight. So I became a professional fighter.
All right, so I also read that you joined the military, and that's basically where your amateur career started to grow?
Yeah, at the age of 17, I joined the United States Marine Corps, and I had a couple of smokers in the Corps, and after I got discharged as a non-commissioned officer in 1959. I started fooling around boxing a little bit at the local PAL, and they talked me into going into the New York and East Coast National Golden Gloves out of Madison Square Garden, where most guys were fighting locally and winning titles in locally. I won the heavyweight championship in '65, the only man in history up until that point and till today to ever win the heavyweight championship out of the East Coast Nationals and Madison Square Garden heavyweight title. And I turned pro after that because there was a lot of black fighters, not many white fighters, and so I turned pro. And it took me 12 years, but I finally got a shot at the title, and the rest is history. You know, I was 15 with Ali, even though I was a 40-1 underdog. Had him down. Stallone saw the fight and got inspired and wrote the movie Rocky, and so on and so on. And until this day, I just had another movie made about me called Chuck.
Yeah, and when we talk about your career, I mean, the fight that stands out first would be 1969. You fought a young George Foreman who'd won a gold medal in 1968. Can you tell us a little bit about that fight?
Yeah, well, George was a young guy coming up. He was a big, strong guy. He was knocking everybody out, and they made a match for us in the Garden. And I did it right in the first two rounds. We were looking to take him deep because he always wasn't in great shape because I'm sorry, because he was knocking everybody out. Anyway, I never got there because he caught me with a left hook. And I actually slipped the punch, but he just caught me over the left eye with the hook and busted me open, and they stopped the fight.
All right, now another fight right after that. You fought the great Sonny Liston. Everything I read from the fight, because it's hard to find any video on that one, was you put up a great fight against him. You want to talk a little bit about Sonny Liston?
You know, Liston had just come off 2 losses to Muhammad Ali and lost the title to him. And I went 10 rounds with him. I gave him a tough fight. It was in the Armory, and he was a great puncher, biggest puncher I ever fought, and he busted me up too, like a lot of guys did because of my style. I was very aggressive. Anyway, fight went 10 rounds. They stopped it with 1 minute and 23 seconds to go in the 10th round, and it was a bloody fight. 71 stitches, a broken nose, broken left cheekbone. But I was still after them when they stopped it, and that was actually the beginning of my career because I became pretty famous, even losing to Liston.
Yeah, and then you go to England and you fought a young Joe Bugner. Tell us a little bit about your experiences fighting overseas, especially in England.
You know, with Bugner, Bugner was a big, strong guy, very good fighter, and we figured we could do the same thing with him, take him a little deep into the fight and maybe win it, stop him or something. But again, Bugner, big, strong, tough guy, and he cut me, gave me a bad cut, and they stopped that at the end of the third round also. So I ran into a bad luck run of getting cut and losing fights.
Yeah, and then your career kind of took off. You started winning a lot of fights. You won 2 out of 3 fights against Randy Newman, who a lot of people know as a boxing referee today. But he was a really good heavyweight. You want to talk a little bit about that series with Newman?
Well, Randy was a very good fighter. He just he came along at a time when we all did, me and Randy, actually, when it was the greatest heavyweight era of all time. You had Foreman, you had Ali, you had Liston, you had Terrell, you had Bonavina, you had me. I was ranked 8th in the world for 42 straight months. And a lot of good heavyweights around in that era. And Jesus, I can't believe this. You know what? Could just give me 1 second. Let me get my throat sprayed. I'll be right back.
Sure, Chuck. All right, guys, Chuck will be back in a minute. He's suffering from a little bit of a cold, so we'll get him right back on, and hopefully he'll be good to go. And I want to remind everybody, if you're listening live right now, you can listen live later on today at 3 o'clock, where we'll have former middleweight contender Alex Ramos on the show, so you definitely won't want to miss that, especially talking about his Retired Fighters Foundation, or Retired Boxers Foundation. So that'll be on thegruelingtruth.net and Spreaker at 3 p.m. Eastern. So we're waiting on former heavyweight contender Chuck Wepner to come back. Got a little bit of a cough, woke up with a cold this morning, so we really appreciate him coming on. So we're going to just hold on a second here and wait for Chuck to come back.
All right, Mike, I'm back.
All right. You good now, Chuck?
Yeah, this stuff usually works. I take this stuff Chloraseptic. I'm having some medical problems the last couple of years, and I'm using all kind of crap. Anyway, I'm okay now.
All right. Well, that happens when you get older, so I take like 20 pills every morning when I get up.
Yeah.
So you talked about you were the number 8 contender for 42 months. You want to
Right.
talk to us a little bit of how you got the title shot from Ali? I know from watching the movie, but movies can not always be truthful. You were waiting on George Foreman if he beat Muhammad Ali. Now,
Right.
when you looked at it, would you have rather fought Foreman or Ali at that time for the title?
Oh, I would have much rather fought Ali. He was the most famous man in the world. And, I beat Ernie Terrell to get into the top 10. He was a former WBC heavyweight champion of the world. I beat him in Atlantic City. So I got my chance, and we took Don King on as our promoter. And Don sent me to Utah to fight a guy named Terry Hinkey, who was knocking everybody out. They called him the Stormin' Mormon. And they said if you won the fight, both of us were white. They said the winner would get a shot at George Foreman. And anyway, because Foreman was the champion, and I knocked out Hinkey. I had him down 7 times. And I got my shot, but unfortunately, 3.5 weeks later, Ali fights Foreman inside a year and knocks out Foreman. So I thought I wasn't going to get the shot, but Don King promised me a shot, and I got it. I got to fight him.
So what was your experience with Don King? I know we hear a lot of things. We've had Tim Witherspoon on before the show who didn't always speak highly of him. But did you have any problems with King, or did you guys get along all right?
I got along great with him. I got every penny I ever promised. He ever promised me. He paid for my training. He was he was very, very good with me.
All right, so when did you find out or how did you find out you were going to get the title shot against Ali in Cleveland?
My mother called me. My mother called me and said there was a big article in the news on the back page that Ali was going to defend against me. The news had broke on the back page of the news, and she picked up the paper and called me. And the next day, Don King called me, and that's how I found out I was getting a shot. I went up to camp, and I trained for 7 weeks for the first and only time in my life. And I got myself into great shape, and I was able to give him a real good fight.
Yeah, because up until that time, you actually were working a regular job while training to fight, weren't you?
Right, I was a salesman, a liquor salesman, and training for the fight, yep.
All right, so the pre-fight build-up, I know I've seen, Merv Griffin or Mike Douglas, you and Ali on there. Ali was crazy like he always was. You had him and Cosell at the weigh-in. What was that like to be a part of that?
It was great, because Ali's the greatest promoter that ever lived. He promotes his own fights, and I got to make friends with him, and through the years we stayed friends, and as a matter of fact, I drove up to Kentucky to his wake, and I was one of the guys standing right there, paying our respects, me, Foreman, Spinks, and a lot of us went up there for that, and I was the only white guy, and they were calling me Snowball. The other champions were calling me Snowball all weekend, but that was cool.
So you get ready to fight Ali. It's the night before the fight. What's going through your mind? What was the day before the fight like? For fans who have no clue what something like that is, I mean, it had to be something, getting ready to go in the ring against the greatest fighter of all time.
Well, I was a little nervous. I wasn't scared, You can't be scared if you're a fighter. But I just wanted to prove I belonged in there. That Don King had done the right thing by getting me the shot. And but by the time the bell rang for the fight that night, I was ready. I was ready, and I was anxious.
So what was your game plan going into the fight to beat Muhammad Ali?
Well, we were going to do the same thing I tried to do. I scored most of my knockouts later in the fight after the 6th or 7th round. We were going to press him, stay on top of him, try to get him out of his game plan, and, rough him up. And it worked. We went the distance, 15 rounds, and they stopped it with 19 seconds to go. But, I was, I had done what I tried to do. We just couldn't score a punch and knock him out because Muhammad Ali was never knocked out. He was stopped by Larry Holmes in the 6th round, but he was just too great that night for me.
Okay, so looking back at the fight, is there anything that you wish you would have done different leading up to the fight or during the fight, or are you happy with your performance?
Oh, I was happy with my performance. I don't think I could have done any better than I did.
All right, so tell us how the hell you ended up in Shea Stadium fighting Andre the Giant in 1976.
Well, it was money. Ali was fighting Inoki in Japan, and they wanted to run a doubleheader, some here, and it was supposed to be Ali fighting Inoki in Japan and me fighting Andre, and then they were going to switch, and Ali was going to fight Andre the Giant, and I was going to go to Japan. Well, I went to Japan, and I fought, but the fight between Ali and Andre the Giant never came off, so I just stayed there in Japan and I fought.
So what was it like going to Japan to fight Inoki?
Great. They put me up for 16 days in a penthouse suite. I had unlimited expenses. Anything I wanted I could buy. I trained for all 16 days because every day you had guys following you around, taking pictures. I got myself in great shape, and the fight was stopped in the 15th round. I'm sorry, the 5th round. He got me in a backbreaker after I almost knocked him out with a left hook. He stepped right into it. But we put on a good show. It was mixed martial arts, wrestler against fighter, and we did a good job for the people over there, and they appreciated it.
All right, so after that, you had a nationally televised bout, I think, against Dwayne Bobbick. What do you remember of that fight?
Well, what I remember is the commissioner told me about roughing him up, and hitting out of a clinch. I had a habit of breaking out of a clinch and coming right back in and banging the guy. And in the 5th round, they told us to separate. I separated, but Bobbick didn't. He came right back in and caught me with a left hook and broke my nose. And I was sucking blood. I couldn't breathe, and they stopped the fight. At the end of the 5th round, they stopped the fight.
Yeah, and then you go on your final fight. You fought Scott Frank, who was a young, up-and-coming fighter who actually a few years later got a shot at the heavyweight championship against Larry Holmes. What do you remember about that fight? I mean, Frank was supposed to take care of you easily, and you gave Frank all he could handle.
Well, I was 41 years old, and he was up and coming. He was, I think he had 19 in a row. He was managed by Lou Duva. And he was a tough kid, real tough kid, and he was just too young and too tough for me. I went 12 rounds. They wanted to stop at the 9th round, my manager, and I said, no, I'm not. You ain't stopping nothing. So I went to 12 rounds. I lost the title, and that was my last fight.
All right, so when you look back at your career, is there anything you would have done differently?
Yeah, I would have tried to get a syndicate to back me so I could have trained full-time instead of just being a part-time fighter. You know, it's tough working all day and then training at night. You really can't get in the best shape.
Also, you want to talk a little bit about your former trainer, Al Braverman, trainer and cut man?
He was great. Al was great. He was more like he was the greatest cut man in boxing history. And he was an excellent manager / business agent, you know. I mean, he shot at the title, so what more can I ask for?
So was it hard to transition from being a boxer to being just a regular person after you retired after the Frank fight?
Nah, not too much. You know, to this day, they still throw dinners for me. Last week, it was the Man of the Year award for the, the Veteran Box Association Hall of Fame, and I get calls all the time, and dinners and stuff like that. It's nice. It's nice to be recognized. I drive around in a new car every 2 years. I lease them, and the plates say champ. And everybody would, wherever I go, realize that hey, even though I wasn't the greatest fighter that ever lived, not by a long shot, but at least I always gave 100%.
Now, you knew we had to get to this at some point, but when did you first see the film Rocky?
When they released it. Rocky, the original Rocky, they invited me. Stallone's, one of his producers invited me to see the movie over in New York at the Lowe's, and I saw it, and it was a smash.
So basically, did they tell you going in that they had based this, or Stallone had based this off of your fight?
He said that I inspired the fight. That's what they told me, yep.
So what was it like sitting there watching a movie that all these people loved? It had to be kind of awe-inspiring for you.
Yeah, it was. It was great. And, to this day, over 40 years later, just as many people call me Rocky as they call me Champ or Chuck. Yeah. See a lot of people, hey, Rock, hey, it's nice.
All right, so I also read where Stallone offered you a part in Rocky II, and you actually read for that part?
I read for it twice in the same day, and I didn't get the part. I wasn't a good actor. I didn't do a good job.
So
I'm gonna have to sign off here. I'm losing my voice completely now. The doctor told me not to talk, and here I am doing a half an hour interview.
All right, Chuck. I appreciate you coming on with us.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for calling, buddy.
Yep.
Take
See
care.
you, Chuck.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Sorry about that, but Chuck's sick today. I just want to remind everybody at 3 o'clock today, we'll have former middleweight contender Alex Ramos on. Also tonight at 10:30 Eastern Time, we'll have the NFL Pick'em Show live on thegruelingtruth.net. Tomorrow night, we'll have the College Football Pick'em Show live on thegruelingtruth.net at 9 o'clock. And immediately following the Indiana-Duke college basketball game tomorrow night, myself and Steve Risley, who was a member of the 1981 National Championship team, will be back to talk about the Indiana-Duke game from last night, which kind of have some trepidation there as an Indiana fan, but you never know. Things do happen. 1984, Indiana beat Michael Jordan in a tournament. 2002, they upset Duke, so we can always hope. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap the show up for today. Make sure you go to mybookie.ag. But for Chuck Wepner, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.